was just sitting here thinking again about the similarities are so striking. You know, he's talking about attaching wings to his remote control car and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember doing all that same kind of stuff. I would buy a kit to build an airplane, and I would take the parts out of it and mix it in with something else and trying to whatever, just me and my brother, we tried building the homemade parachutes, you know, and jumping off the roof and stuff. You know, there was always something to do with how things traveled through the air that I was messing with, and I don't know. I totally get it. Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast. We'll be bringing you the tips, tricks, hacks, and shortcuts to get you into the cockpit faster and cheaper. I'm your co-host, Sean.
And I'm Mike Martin. And today we've got a great audio question for you. And we always tell the viewers, hey, if you can record it in audio, you'll have a much higher chance of this getting on the podcast. Today is from Shazam. And he has a very, very interesting experience for his first few hours of flying that I think we can all relate to. So, and we'll have some good insight on this, because Sean and I had, when we heard this question, we're like, oh man, this sounds just like us. So we'll go ahead and play his. Yep.
Yeah, this episode's going to be great. And I mean, great for somebody who's just hasn't driven to the airport yet, and about to take their intro discovery flight, their first lesson. And full disclosure here, Mike, this is an audio question, but we created the audio ourselves using AI. Shazam's email was super long, and we just thought that you would much rather hear an AI voice read this thing than Mike or myself stumbling through it to read it. But here we go. We're going to go ahead and play the question now.
Good day, Mike and Sean. I first wanted to thank you guys so much for what you do. I've learned so much from the podcast and recently got the Pro Pilot Playbook course and knocked that out in 2 days. I'm an automotive technician that's looking to possibly go into a second career as a pilot. To start my story, I've always loved cars. Even back in elementary school, I loved reading, and ended up reading a book about planes and how they work, and thought I was the most genius kid understanding lift. There was a time when I was trying to make a flying car, and was reading up on planes and cars to come up with a plan. I ended up making some cardboard wings for my RC car to generate lift and possibly take off. It wasn't very successful, but it did leave me with a fascination that seems to get me throughout life. I get super excited to go on a plane for vacation. I almost went to Vaughn College by LGA for my NP, but got a scholarship to auto trade school through my high school auto body class. I have made a very successful career in the auto industry, but there's been times I think about going back to school to do aviation. Especially during the time when I worked at LGA fixing Avis rental vehicles with a flight school right there next door. I had some friends become pilots, and I've always thought they have such a cool job being around planes all day. I watch YouTube videos trying to learn as much as I can, and I love bugging my wife on the airlines, explaining how the APU is running. Now they're using that to start the main engine. You can hear they introduced fuel now. They're gonna start the second engine soon. My wife is very supportive to me for this dream. I don't know why it took this long, but I finally realized that I can be a pilot. It was just never something I saw myself able to do before. I think sometimes we think becoming a pilot isn't something we can do, but just never realized we too can become a pilot. At some point in my working toward this dream, I found your podcast and started at episode 1, and have listened all the way up to currently episode 75. I went to some flight schools and found one that has a schedule I believe I can work around to stay working at my job. I am not ready to take my loan out just yet with the current interest rates. But in the meantime, I figured I'd revisit the playbook and podcast to come up with a game plan. I've seen an AME and got my first class medical certificate. I've also booked a discovery flight. My main question stems from the discovery flight. I've heard so many stories about how after taking off in that Cessna, people will get hooked and fall in love with flying. I can't say that I didn't enjoy it, but I more felt overwhelmed. It was a Cessna, and I had watched a whole Cessna 172 overview. I had practiced and gotten good at the phonetic alphabet and felt quite prepared. But in the plane listening to the radio that day, I thought, that guy was talking really fast. I kinda understand some bits, but will I ever be able to understand it all that fluently? And, being a Garmin G1000% equipped plane, it seemed like information overload. I definitely got the hang of it as we progressed, but it felt like drinking through a fire hose. I really didn't even fully process everything that happened during the flight till driving home. Since then, I decided to purchase some accessories for an at-home simulator to get a bit more used to the controls. And like I mentioned, I started and finished the playbook. Definitely tons of good info in there. And Mike's flight training jumpstart mini course was super beneficial in helping make things more clear and me getting some light bulb moments. I loved that. I am now working through an online ground school so I can get my FAA written knocked out. Learning about this stuff is cool, especially after going back and listening to the podcast again, and starting to have a more detailed understanding of the different things you guys talk about. So my question is it normal after having such a fascination with aviation to feel like that first flight wasn't as much of a hook like a crack addiction as Mike says it can be? I do plan on talking to the school about training with a steam gauge plane to learn in first, and then later learning glass with a G1000. The school is big on pushing that they have a lot of new airplanes with the Garmin G1000. I suspect I will answer my question myself by just taking more lessons, but I would love any suggestions and feedback. Oh, random thought. I just realized that I probably should have raised my seat a bit that day, because now that I'm thinking about it, I couldn't see too well above the dash of the plane. I appreciate you guys so much for what you do for the community. And I'm noticing aviation is just an awesome group of people. I went to Hawaii and took a helicopter ride and spoke with the pilot for a while. Joined a Florida pilots group on Facebook full of great people. And of course, I've been listening to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, and it's amazing how welcoming and positive you guys and the rest of the aviation world is. Hoping to see you in the skies one day. Shazam.
Well, that's a great question, man. As soon as we heard that, we're like, there's so many similarity to our own life. Wouldn't you say, Sean?
Absolutely. I myself was that same kid. I remember my childhood bedroom. I had so many posters on the wall, like of military aircraft, F-15s, F-16s, and not just Air Force stuff. There was Navy stuff. There was space stuff. I had, a bunch of NASA stuff. And then, when I say all over my walls, I mean all over, like a calendar, an aviation calendar. After the year was over, I would take all the pictures out of the calendar so I could fill in the smaller spots on my walls with more airplane pictures. It was, I was building models, both, the gas-powered ones and that you flew as well, but also just the plastic or the little tiny balsa wood stuff. And I would design my own things. My dad was an early adopter in the PC stuff and the computers. And I had the very first Microsoft Flight Simulator software program, game, whatever you want to call it. And through the years, more and more of them. But all I ever wanted to do was be a pilot. So I had the same exact experience. When I showed up, I did my first lesson. I don't even think it was an introductory or discovery flight. I showed up, I was gung-ho, like, let's get this thing going. I need a logbook, I need this, I need da-da-da-da-da. And I remember being done with that lesson, getting back in my car, driving home from the airport, thinking, damn, I did not know as much as I thought I knew when I showed up at the airport. It was a little overwhelming. It frustrated me because I thought I was going to go in there and, just kill it. But I walked away with pretty much the same feelings. And later in life, I figured it out, what the problem was. After I was a flight instructor myself, it's just that everything I thought I knew, it just didn't apply. It had nothing to do with those first few hours in the airplane. Yeah, I had some good information on aerodynamics and how things worked and, the names of all the parts on the airplane and whatever, but it really didn't apply to any kind of what you're doing on those first few lessons of getting muscle memory down and just understanding the forces involved on the yoke to make the airplane do what you want it to do. And I just thought all that stuff was going to be whatever. I'm just going to have that. That's easy. There's no way I won't be able to do that. But it's an acquired, learned thing. We all start from the beginning in airplanes. I've said that for years. Even Chuck Yeager had his first few hours in an airplane, and he looked just as silly as the rest of us because we all start from the beginning. It's not like driving a car where you sat there and watched your parents do it for 16 years before you got a crack at it. This is brand new stuff. And there's a third dimension involved, of up and down. So, yeah, that's my take on it. And I personally think, well, go ahead, Mike. Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, my story is very, very similar and very relatable, I think, to yours, Sean, and also to his. I mean, I was enamored with airplanes as a kid. I don't know why. I mean, I made rubber band powered airplanes, balsa airplanes, paper airplanes, ever since I could imagine. I built plastic models. And then when I was finally, could save enough money up from, cutting grass or whatever, is when I got into gas powered models. And I got super ate up with it, man. I mean, I had I pulled this picture up. Now, this is when I was in college, but I got into the big, heavy quarter scale and 1/3 scale with legit gas-powered engines and smoke systems and gyroscopic rudder controls and all this stuff. And this is a long time ago. I'll go ahead and say I was a shit-hot radio control pilot. I mean, I could do Lamshavaks and rolling circles and you name it, man. And I knew what I thought. I knew everything about aerodynamics. And like you, I would build my own concept planes and design them and fly them. I mean, based on, other people's designs or modify, what I had. So, I was a little... When I did my first few flights in a light airplane, actually flying in a small airplane, I really was, I don't want to say arrogant about it, but I was overconfident. I mean, I felt all those hours of design and that I would be so far ahead. I think I remember even having a conversation with another kid that was my age at the radio control field, like, I don't even think we need much training to fly a Cessna. I mean, it would just based on what we know here and everything. And just like you said, Sean, so my first experience in a light airplane was a friend of my parents, and I share this in the Pro Pilot Playbook in extent. But we decided to take off and go fly around my house, and I got really bad motion sick. I mean, I was sick not only in the airplane, but for hours after we landed. And I was battling that. I thought maybe I couldn't even be a pilot, but I was able to overcome that. And I share some of that information in our course. But I was able to overcome that. But just the sensation of flying was just, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to, get airsick. And I there's so many things going on that are so new that it is a lot to learn. It's a learned skill, no matter who you are and how much you know before you go in there. You have to get used to the muscle memories, and Sean and I talked off camera. The other thing is, we see this in jets. So, Sean and I have both flown lots of jets, and you need a type rating for those jets, and you need to go to intensive simulator training. And you could, I've flown all these high performance Lears and Hawkers and all this stuff. And then, you get into a new one, you go down to get a type rating, and now you got all this jet time. You've flown all these different jets all over the world. And boy, that first hour in that simulator in a new airplane, you feel like just an idiot. I mean, you don't know where your hands aren't going, where you think they want them to go. You don't know where any of the switches are. Everything seems like it's happening at double the speed of your old airplane. You're using some of your old habits, the old muscle memories off of old airplanes that don't even apply, to this one. So we go through this at all stages in our career. But I just want to tell him that he's not alone. Actually, this is very common. And then really after a few hours in the plane, he will excel. What typically happens is everybody has that learning curve in the very beginning. But the students that live and breathe aviation excel after they get used to the airplane, much higher rate than the other.
Right. I was just sitting here thinking again about the similarities are so striking. He's talking about attaching wings to his remote control car and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember doing all that same kind of stuff. I would buy a kit to build an airplane, and I would take the parts out of it and mix it in with something else and trying to whatever, or what, just me and my brother, we'd tried building the homemade parachutes, and jumping off the roof and stuff. There was always something to do with how things traveled through the air that I was messing with, and I don't know. I totally get it. And
did you do this, Sean? What really got dangerous is when the model rockets. So you started to fly.
I had so many of those things. Me and my kids, my boys today, we still got a ton of them things. But me and my brother, we tore them things. And I had some that would take pictures. I had all the ones you could put multi-stage rockets, stuff that payload rockets. You could put, insects or small rodents in and launch them. All kinds. Or then we started modifying stuff as we got older. Let's see how long we can get these things to fly sideways across, parallel to the ground. All that kind of stuff. But you mentioned something else, Shazam, about the seat height in the Cessna. I've said this for years, that Cessna 172, something about the way that seat is designed. Now, I don't know about the brand new ones that are coming out, that they've built in the last 10, 15 years, but all those old 70 models, 60 and 70 model Cessnas that I flew, that 172 seat, even with it cranked all the way as high as it would go, it was still just never right for a guy my size who's 5'10" to see over the dash. It just blew my mind. Like, who is flying this airplane? But the Cessna 150 was never like that, and the Piper products were not like that, which is one of the reasons why I own a Piper, because I wanted to teach my kids how to fly, and they are great for small stature or height people.
Yeah.
What else? I had a couple other notes here I wanted to mention, but I don't know. Shazam, the biggest thing, I agree, Mike, 100%, that this is going to go away on its own. The whole reason this was happening is because all the information he had that he was in. I love what you said about this isn't arrogance. This was a confidence. And it's the same type of confidence that you would show up if you had studied really hard for a test you got to take in school, and you show up to take it. You're not arrogant that you're going to pass it. You're confident that you're going to pass it because you put in so much time and effort for this thing. So that's why the frustration's there, that you have devoted so much time and energy and passion into learning this aviation thing. And then you show up that day for the first flight, and the first couple things that happen, just like you, I knew all about radio communications. I knew the phonetic alphabet. And then when I got there that day, I was blown away how fast the controllers were talking down at Lunken Airport, where we did this flight. I'm like, holy crap, that's nuts. They talk that fast, Same thing. But it's just once the first couple things started going haywire that day, something you didn't know was a thing or you didn't understand, and now you just saw it and whatever, your brain's back there fixated on that thing. Like, how did I not know that? And now 3 more things have happened. So it's this, a snowball effect of frustration, and now you're behind the airplanes. You're trying to figure everything. You think you should figure everything out at once, and that's why we call that your saturation point. And that's why you didn't actually realize everything that had happened until you sat down in your car to drive home and started processing it all again. This is very common your first few hours of flying. It's something they teach. It's something you have to learn as an instructor. It's required. It's part of your training to become a CFI, is knowing that this stuff happens. And it's not a big deal. It's going to go away on its own. And once that train's left the station and all the slack's out of those cars, you're going to be ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then on the seat issue, I still fidget full with the seat when I'm flying a jet. I mean, it's just something, it never seems quite right because the other guy was in the seat. He's got it in, I always call, my co-pilot a pumpkin with legs. There was a pumpkin with legs sitting in here. I don't know. And then, what you don't think about, you adjust your seat in the car and you're good. But in a plane, you've got all these different forces, coming at. So, you go to push those throttles back and you get in a climb, and now you're further from the dash, so you realize you should have been a little closer. And, then you're in a climb and you're trying to use gravity to move the seat forward, and it doesn't like that because you're going this way. So, yeah, I mean, it's just part of it. But this is all learning curve. You're not alone. Stick with it. I'm sure he's going to do great, especially with that background like he's talking about. Plus, he's enamored with airplanes. That's all he talks about. So I just I love the question. I love the similarities and the parallels, and yeah, we'll have to have him right back and let us know how everything goes after a few hours in the seat.
Yeah, Shazam, if you after you end up seeing this, absolutely shoot us another line and let us know that it did go away after a few more lessons. But I agree, great question. It's something somebody else out there has experienced, and thank you. If you have a question, you'd like us to answer here on the show, you can email us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. And we do like the video questions or audio questions. They flow a little bit better for this platform.
Yep. And, this isn't a sales pitch because I really believe it is just such a great value for the listeners. But we've launched we're about 6 or 8 months into our online live weekly coaching where you guys get to meet us one-on-one. We follow you every step of the way through your training. You report to us weekly about what you've done and what you've learned. And then we help you every step of the way. And it doesn't matter what stage of training you're in. You could be not even been to the airport yet and don't even have an hour in your logbook, or we have people with lots of hours that are trying to land a job, and Sean and I will use any of our techniques to help them. We've actually used some personal contacts for some people to help them. Yep. So it's
and we got some guys that have obtained jobs already from this. And some real success stories in this group.
Yep. So check out some of our products at propilotplaybook.com. And in the meantime, we'll continue to give you free, great content on YouTube. So make sure you pound the like button and you subscribe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.